Namespace is a feature of C++ that is used to avoid name conflicts. So we will discuss about creating or defining a namespace and accessing the namespace. Consider a program. I have my main function here. Within main, I have declared a variable a as integer and I have initialized it with a value 67. I have reused the variable name a as float and I have initialized the same with a value 8.9. This is not permitted by our language. Why? Because when you try to access a, you're creating an ambiguity to the compiler because the compiler cannot make out here whether you're referring to integer a or to float a. Let's build and run this program. Yes, you can see an error here. The program is not giving you output. So go to line number 6. You can see the error message here. Conflicting declaration float a. Previous declaration as int a. So this situation is referred to as the name conflicts. To fix this, we make use of namespaces. Let's see how to create or define a namespace. So use the keyword namespace. Specify your namespace name. Let me name it as first. Within the brackets, you can add elements to your namespace. So here let me include an integer entity a. So I have created a namespace by name first and I have added an element to it, that is integer a, initialized with the value 67. I'll create one more namespace. So use the keyword namespace. Specify your namespace name. I have given the name as second. Now within brackets, I can add the elements to the namespace. So here I will make use of the float a. So I have created two namespaces, first and second. The element of the first namespace is integer entity and the element of my second namespace is float. Now, how to access the elements of your namespace? There are multiple methods for the same. We will be discussing two methods. The first one is making use of the scope resolution operator and the second one is using director. So let's go ahead and see how to make use of the scope resolution operator to access the element of the namespace. So to access the namespace through scope resolution operator, specify your namespace name. Use the scope resolution operator. This double colon is referred to as the scope resolution operator. Then specify the element that you want to access from the namespace. So when I specify a here, it is accessing the integer element of my first namespace. Let me use a cout statement and print the same and verify it whether it is accessing or not. So let's build and run this program and verify. Yes. You can see your output 67. That means it is accessing the element a of the first namespace, which is an integer. The same way you can access your second namespace as well. So cout, specify the namespace name, scope resolution operator, the element that you want to access from the namespace. So this cout statement is going to give the output as 67 and here I'll be getting 8.9 because this a is referring to the float entity, which is the element of my second namespace. I'll use an endl statement here so that it is easy to distinguish both. Let's build and run and verify our output. Yes. The first output as expected is 67, the integer entity of the first namespace. The second 8.9, you're accessing the second namespace. We'll move on with the second method of accessing your namespace, that is by using directive. So same namespaces I'm using here. To access, use the keyword using, use the keyword namespace, then give the name of the namespace that you want to access. So using namespace first instructs your compiler to access the first namespace. So after this statement, if I try to access A, this will be accessing the element A of the first namespace. So you're expecting an output of 67 for this cout statement. So let's build and run and verify our output. Yes. As expected, you can see the output 67 here. So through the two methods, we have seen that we were accessing the elements of the namespace. Then what is the difference? The first method, making use of scope resolution operator, gives the privilege for the programmer to access only the desired element of the namespace. Whereas the second method, that is using directive, enables the programmer to access the entire namespace in one shot. So now you will be able to explain this statement using namespace std. So it's clear that you're trying to use a namespace by name std. So std is a standard namespace. Inside this namespace, you have the library files that is included. So for the successful execution of your program, you need to include the standard namespace as a part of your program.